So when I shut my office door, it is shut and it's not coming back open until the next morning. So if anyone is not currently doing that, you gotta figure a way out to do that, because otherwise you're always going to be distracted by your work, especially if you're really driven and kind of a workaholic like myself.
Eric Halverson, welcome aboard. So excited to have you for our high performance series. Looking forward to letting people get to know you a little bit more and learning more about your background and what you got going on in your life. A lot going on in your life. A little one just recently joined the family of Halversons. You have a new business that is growing and flourishing. Got a new person on board, I heard. That was awesome. Congrats. So welcome.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit. You were a wonderful recommendation by our now good friend. You've known him a little bit more than I have, but starting to be a good friend, Alec Wands, who was on the show here recently. He said, "Who do you need to meet?" And I said, "Well, I like high performers." He's like, "Well, let me get you in touch with somebody I know." And so that's why we're sitting here. But tell us why, what got you into this world of high performance, a little bit about your background that got you where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alec is a great friend of mine. He's pretty awesome. When you have a conversation with him, you know you're going to get something out of it, because he is very, very smart and he's very well connected. But really where things got started for me is just my background and career with wrestling. I've wrestled since second grade at a pretty high level all the way through high school and then into college for a bit until just that was where my story kind of ended for wrestling. But having the lessons that I had through that really helped develop my, what I needed to be where I'm at now. And that was really the foundation of what I could build off of in my career, in my working career. So that was a very good foundation. So my wrestling career was great. Also just absolute blessings from God. I mean, about 4.5 years ago, I was working at Walmart, and I would work from 4 a.m. until 2 p.m. And then I'd try to get overtime. I'd go home to my wife and I would say hi and then bye. And I'd go DoorDash for hours just to pay our bills. And I was still in school. So then I would do my homework until about 1, 2 in the morning, and I'd be back at Walmart at 4 a.m. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case for a lot of people who find themselves performing at a higher level later on. I have found, so people who listen and people who know me know that my background started in sports performance. And ironically, I watch about 3 minutes of sports a year, usually when the Olympics are on or when it's, the Super Bowl or the big game. And the reason I loved sports so much is because I found that people who were dedicated to improving themselves typically lived in a world of sports. That was an arena where it was very easy to assume that the people that were playing or the people that were training were trying to get better, usually in their physical capacity, but so much of it bled over in other aspects of their lives, the tenacity despite the failure, the willingness to sacrifice for a bigger cause, those types of things. And I have found that the reason I continue to appreciate athletes is because they take those same lessons and they go and they apply it to other aspects of their life, whether that be in business or in their career, starting something, innovating, their family, their faith, whatever it happens to be. What were some of the things, Eric, that you feel directly correlated to from wrestling to what you're doing now?
The number one thing is discipline. If you don't have discipline, you're not going to get much done. And that's something that I have had for a very long time. But when I see it in others and they just don't necessarily have that, structure comes into play. Because when there's a lack of discipline, if you have structure, people will thrive off of that and develop discipline. And that's actually a lesson I learned through my wife. And my wife was a kindergarten teacher. She stays home with our daughter now. But I always thought that everything was, heart and mind, discipline, like you need to do this, this, and this. And if you miss a day, it's like Atomic Habits. You never want to miss twice, whatever. And it's just sheer discipline. Doesn't matter what the calendar says, like you're doing what you're doing today. But later on, when I was still wrestling, I really learned from my wife that it's about structure too. You can have discipline, but if there's no structure, you're not going to get as much done as you could. And even if you don't have discipline, as long as you follow your calendar and your structure that you set before yourself, you're going to be okay. So that's really the two things that work in tandem that I've learned and I've really been using. I wasn't very good at it when we first got married, and I never used our Google Calendar. But now, like if it's not on my calendar, it's not happening.
Yeah. I love that. A lot of people look at that and they say it's rigidity, which I understand their sentiment. I love spontaneity from time to time. We just got off of a cruise that we were in the Western Caribbeans. And so, there's a time and place for going, hey, let's go check out this path less traveled. Right. But I also think that people suffer more from not having structure in their daily life. And to me, a calendar is to our time what a budget is to our money. Right. A good friend of mine, Jen Vatu, he was on the show a while back, said a budget is basically telling your money where to go instead of asking where it went. And I loved that sentiment, and I apply it to my calendar, probably similar to you, is my calendar is to help me make sure that I'm dedicating my time to the right things. And I'm not a slave to it. There are times where I have something on my calendar. I had stuff on my calendar today that I didn't get to, but I'm much more likely to be able to understand where my time is going and dedicate it towards something I want to, instead of just letting it slip away. So I love that you shared that structure piece is huge. Tell us a little bit, because you mentioned, I was a wrestler, but you weren't just a wrestler, right? Like you went to state 3 times, right? You're team captain, like you did pretty well in the wrestling world, right? Like people don't just go to state on a whim. So tell us a little bit about maybe some of the discipline and structure that you had back then, and maybe some of the things that you now do that translate, because obviously we're not wrestling anymore. Most people that listen to this show are not high school wrestlers. So how did it translate? What were some examples?
Yeah, and so a lot of things that transferred from wrestling in high school really surrounded, again, my structure and my training habits. So when I would go into practices, I was always looking at what I needed to improve upon. Some people really only stuck to what they were good at, when I and myself and a lot of other people wanted to get better at other areas we weren't good at. So then we could be a much more well-rounded wrestler. And that's really how you get into college wrestling, that and a couple other aspects, and how you get even higher to, Olympics just ended. Some of these guys in the Olympics, how do you think they got there? The same exact thing. They can always get better at anything. Even if they think they're perfect, they're not. So there's that, but also just the willingness to step forward and, take one for the team sort of talk, especially when it came to me, it was a lot of times cutting weight. So for my business, a lot of times I'm doing some pretty unfun work, but that's okay, because that is what is allowing my sales team to go and do what they need to do. I don't like uploading leads all day, but hey, if they're burning through them and making a ton of sales and they're having a great paycheck and that's going to help them in their life and their success, more power to them. I would love to do that work. And that stemmed from, hey, it'd be better for you to drop another weight class and, maybe not win the tournament, but just go for it. Right. And you'd be a great part of the team. And I did that. There were multiple times where I had different tournaments just absolutely locked down. I'd already beaten kids that were going to be in the tournament, could have easily won it. But it would have been better for the team to have a team victory. So I would go up or down a weight class. Many times where I would weigh in just above a weight class. So, maybe like, if, for example, 126, if I did 126.5, then I could wrestle up to 138 instead of just staying 26 and 32. So now there's much more range of where I can go, but I'm at a weight disadvantage now. So learning how to be a versatile person and be able to make those adjustments for others is really important. That's something that I feel like has been lost for quite some time. Is we're ultimately doing this not just for ourselves, but for others. I don't just have my business for myself. I have it for my family. I want my wife to stay at home with our daughter. I want my daughter to be able to go and do whatever she wants. Whatever sport. I want her to have the best equipment for it. All of that in the future too, with future kids, but also with my employees. I want them to have the life they want. I want them to have the paycheck that they want. I want their families to have the same thing that my family has. So I feel like that is one thing that's also been lost, but part of that's also serving too, which I see has been tossed by the wayside in sales nowadays too.
Oh, 100%. I think sales, people forget this concept that sales is really serving the client and helping them determine what they best need, and then figuring out if what you have is what they need or not, right? That's a service to a degree. So I agree with that. And what a powerful kind of story you shared of this idea of basically sacrifice, right? Sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. You were willing to lean into the idea of failure for the benefit of the team when a assured victory was at hand in front of you if you decided to just stay at the weight that you were. I think that's a powerful lesson in helping people understand the meaning of serving other people. And that's a huge aspect and component of fulfillment and happiness in general. We find through studies that the more we focus on serving others and the more we focus on benefiting other individuals, even at the sake of maybe not focusing so much on ourselves, our happiness improves, our anxiety decreases, our depression decreases. I mean, these are facts backed by science. And so that's a phenomenal anecdote to that very thing. That's awesome. You'd mentioned also this idea of structure around your time, around your calendar, probably also I would say around your environment as well. And the model of well-being that I'm creating, spatial well-being, is a big aspect of it. So how do you dedicate the area that you live in, or the surroundings that you have, the house that you live in, but even to a degree maybe your time, and how you dedicate your hours on the calendar. What are some things that you do now that you would say structurally benefit you in your day-to-day strive for success?
Yeah, I would say that this is still something I'm working on. I've gotten better, but I was terrible at it for a while. And the way that I look at it now, especially with my time, is two things. One, when it comes to work, what am I worth? And if that dollar amount, I have to be true to that. So if I'm going to say that my time is worth $100, $200, $500 an hour, then if there's any work that's worth below that, I need to really consider if that's something for me to do or if I need to delegate that out.
Sure.
And it's okay to delegate things out that are beneath you. Like, that's okay, especially when you're a business owner. You can't do everything because you're limiting to yourself as to how much money you can make, how many projects you can take on. There's only 24 hours in a day and one of you. If you can find someone who does 85% of the work that you do, that's good enough for me. I'll delegate things to you and you get it done to the best of your ability. And that's great. And that's saving me time to go work on other things. Next part is with family. Family time is above all when it comes to different areas of the day. I used to work 2 jobs. I was working for Paychecks and retirement sales. Loved it. They're great. I loved that job, but I was also running my business. And I would work from, like 6 a.m. to 6, 7 p.m. And when I had my daughter, there were times where she'd be in bed sleeping and I hadn't even seen her once that day. I find that to be unacceptable, and I can't even believe that I let that happen. So now it's like, okay, we're done at 4 or 5, depending on when I start in the morning. And you know what? I have to trust that what I need to get done will get done today, tomorrow, the next day, because things on my calendar push too. But I need to not only have trust in myself to have the drive and the discipline to get those things done and stay on topic, but to have trust in God that I'm going to have time and those things are going to get done. Because ultimately, I can do the best, but I'm limited. So, last thing with structure with my house, if you saw my office right now, you would laugh at me because it's a mess. And my wife just like power cleaned the whole entire house. And she'd be like, why are you so messy? But something I'm still working on. But one thing that I'm so glad I did was with my office at our apartment before we got our house. It was the office, the room to play video games whenever I wanted to with some of my old college buddies. I would work out in there. I had my fishing stuff in there. I had my hunting stuff in there. So whenever I was going to do anything fun, I'd be in my office. And then a ding would go off and I'd check it for a second and I'd be back to work. So now with my office here, I only have my office stuff. I don't have anything else in here that is not work related. So when I shut my office door, it is shut and it's not coming back open until the next morning. So if anyone is not currently doing that, you got to figure a way out to do that, because otherwise you're always going to be distracted by your work, especially if you're really driven and like kind of a workaholic like myself. You're going to keep on finding yourself at your desk and you're going to be like, oh, geez, it's been an hour. How am I here? That's why.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's powerful. And as we find ourselves more and more in the space of working from home and remote working and what I call work-life blending, not balance, right? Because balance would imply that they're two separate things. And they're just not. Work is a part of our life. It's one of our dimensions of well-being, and we can't just put it on a pedestal and pretend it doesn't come home with us. But as we see this more and more happening, that idea of spatial specificity is huge, right? This idea that this space is specifically for work and this space is specifically for sleep and this space is specifically for entertainment is so important. And I don't think you are suggesting, nor would I, that you have to have a huge house with rooms dedicated to each one of these things. But instead, we have to have spaces dedicated to each one of these things. And that can be as simple as, okay, if I have a studio apartment, one chair in my kitchen space is facing a wall, and that wall has a picture on it that says, whatever, nobody cares, work harder, or whatever it happens to be. And that is my space. That's my chair, my work chair facing my workstation. And that's where I do my work. Right. And so having that dedicated space is vital, because with our world of distractions and dopamine hits, you cannot ask yourself to be surrounded by all of these enlightening or lighting, shiny, flashy things. That's like telling somebody who's, struggling to lose weight to put a donut on the counter and just never eat it. It's like, that's not fair to yourself. Right.
Right.
Yeah. That's really, really cool. I love that. So you talked a little bit about things that you can continue to improve on, which I love. That humility is one of the aspects that in high performers that I find to be one of the reasons I bring them on board. What are some of the things you feel like you're really crushing right now in terms of your well-being?
Well, I wish I could say sleep, but my daughter's in a little bit of a sleep regression, and me and my wife tend to go every other at night at the best we can. Sometimes I'm not the greatest at that even, but so sleep's been a little bit rare around here. But some things that we have been absolutely crushing is just small bits of family time to take a break through the work. So I'll get up and I start the coffee, and we go on our first morning walk with the dog and with my daughter Esther. And it's not long. It's maybe a quick 15, 20 minutes. We get back, boom, coffee's ready. I'm in the office. I'm doing my admin stuff. I'll flow into whatever's next. And then around lunch, then we can have some lunch. We go on another walk with the dog and Esther. Usually she wakes up around like 12:30, 1 o'clock from her nap. And then we go on another walk, and then we come back. I do the rest of my work. And depending when I start in the morning, boom, I'm done. Door closes. It's family time. We'll do our running around, or I'll just take the baby for a bit and play around, which is fun. But it's really just knowing that it's okay to take breaks. Because for me, there was no break for a long time. I mean, wrestling, there was no break. I would have practices after practice, just one-on-one. And then on weekends, I would have practices after practice for one-on-ones. And then I'd be going to the gym. And I was at Walmart. I was working at Walmart and doing DoorDash, so there was no break there. And then from there, I was still in school and doing an IT sales job. After that, it was paychecks and moving and then starting the business. So I really had no break. It's okay to take intermittent breaks. That's what I've had to learn. I've gotten much better at that, and it helps clear your mental headspace and get back into work much, much easier, and get more done efficiently. I would say another thing that we've really been a lot better on is being outside. And it doesn't have to be for long periods of time with our walks. Sometimes it's not even that. I just, struggling with something, I can't figure it out. Just go outside, just that change of pace, not being in front of a computer screen, not looking at your phone, because as a business owner, I mean, as anyone, your phone is always calling out to you. You're always getting these ads from Instagram or YouTube or, email, phone calls, whatever. Your phone is always calling out to you. So just setting it down, take 5 minutes just to be outside in the sun, whatever, just clear your head. That is, instrumental in being able to figure out some tasks. As sometimes you'll come back and you'll sit down. It's like, oh, the answer was in front of me the whole entire time. And you kind of feel like an idiot, but hey, you figured it out and you had a good time while doing it because you were outside for a bit.
Sure.
Yeah. There's that. And then also the last key thing for me, at least, is knowing that I mentioned that 85%, it's actually from a book. And of course, I'm going to forget the title right now. Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Oh,
boom.
Yeah.
Got it. That's a lot quicker than what I thought I was going to have.
Yeah.
So he says in there, if you can have someone who does 85% of what you would do for that task, that's a good person to have around. And that was so hard for me to wrap my head around because I'm such a go person. I'm such a perfectionist that I know exactly what to say to some clients, and I am pretty dang good at sales, but some people, when they're just learning and they're coming up and they're really starting to learn, maybe it's their first sales job, they're not going to know that much. You still need to give them that opportunity to learn and stumble and fall. And sometimes that is losing deals, and that's okay. But if you handhold them or do something for them at all times just to uphold your standard, they're not going to learn, and you're handicapping yourself once again to get other tasks done. So I have been really working to not do that with my employees, and I check in with them every single Friday for their one-on-ones. And one of the first things I say is, hey, do you feel like I'm micromanaging you? Am I doing too much? Or do you have enough time, or you're just doing you and you're taking care of your stuff? And if it's no, you need to get off my back, then yeah, okay, I need to get off your back a bit. But for the most part, it's been pretty great so far. So I'm kind of happy about how that's been going. They've been doing fantastic. I'm more than happy with them. They're a great team.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you touched on so many things there that I think are really powerful in terms of your well-being and the things that you feel are going well for you. I think one of I mentioned before we hopped on, because you mentioned your walks that you take, which I think are great. One of the things I'm always trying to do is habit stack around the different dimensions of our wellness. And so walking is a phenomenal way to get physical activity. It's a great way to mentally de-stress a little bit, as long as you're, getting away from the distractions, getting away from the phones, the things where you're kind of just distracting yourself from whatever it is that you're working on, taking mental breaks too, so that you're emotional, you calm down a little bit. Being in nature, it actually has, again, proven to help with anxiety, depression, those types of things. So I think that that's great. The social connection you get with your family by being together in that space, right? So social, physical, mental, and emotional intellectual wellness to a degree, because you're able to think more clearly, right? When you're able to do that. So many benefits to even something as simple as taking a walk in nature, which I think is phenomenal to do. And I think, to your point, it's the intentionality behind that. It's I've made the decision to do that. I've made the decision to step away from work, to take those breaks. I actually did a blog post on my website about tier 4 vacations. So if anybody's interested, they can go read that. But we actually, at our house, we have 4 different levels of vacations and the purpose behind each one of them. And so being intentional with that time, because again, if you're not intentional with it, you're not going to know where it went, and you're never going to be able to take vacations. But I love that you're able to do that. One of my questions to you, though, Eric, is what switched in you that gave you that permission in your mind to say it's okay to take breaks? Because you went so long with so many different role models that said, go, do this. And I don't think that's typically intentional from a coach or from our mentors, that they want you to always be working, but they only see a small part of our lives. Our wrestling coach only sees our wrestling, and that's what they think is the most important thing. So what in you, or what happened to you that made you make that switch to it's okay to slow down, take breaks, rest once in a while?
It was having my daughter. I just love her so much, and every time she sees me, she lights up. And just the other day, she said "Dada" for the first time. And when you miss out on a couple of firsts, you really start to think what's important. And I say this to my employees too. I don't want your work to come before your family, because we don't live to work. If you solely live just to work, you don't really have much. I would rather have really nothing going for me in a career and have my family. And that switch happened when I had my daughter, and the first couple of weeks back with the business and working for paychecks just at the same time wasn't a good combination, because I was working all the time. And I remember I was kind of down on myself, because it was like the third day in a row that she had already been down for bed. And I stepped out of the office, and my wife was like, you really need to figure this out, because even though she's young, like, I can tell that she's looking for you. Huh. And it's like, you're right. Like, she is. So, little things go a long way. It doesn't have to be hours of your time. Sometimes I'll just relieve my wife for a quick 5-10 minutes, and she'll come in here, and I'll turn off my keyboard, and she'll smack on it with both of her hands, laughing, having a great time. And then it's okay. Here's a couple smooches, and you're back off with mom, and I'm back to work. But having her and realizing, like, it's not just me anymore. I probably should have had this switch when I got married. But again, because I was so go, and it's not even necessarily a blame it on the coaches thing. It was me. Like, that was my mindset that I had for myself. I couldn't break that, but it's not just me anymore, right? It's my wife, it's my daughter, any kids we have in the future. Throw the dog in there, might as well. But it's all of us. So I can't just live for myself. I have to live by them and for them too.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I think that's amazing. And as someone who has a child as well, when we're getting married or we're coming together in a union with the ones that we love, it's almost easier to make the excuse of, like, they get it, they understand, they know why I'm working so hard, so I can do it, because they just get it. Even if you've never had that conversation, you kind of justify it in your mind. But once you have a kid, they don't get it. They don't care, right? You working 40, 50 hours a week doesn't do anything for them. Yes, it does to a degree, because you have to support them and provide for them, but they're not going to remember that. They're going to remember the times that you were or were not there. And so I fully get what you're saying when you say, like, once the kid came, there was no more excuse to hide in my work.
Yeah.
That's great. So one last question, then I want to hear some more about maybe some ways that people can learn more about the mindset that you possess. But what would you say is your definition of success, at least in your world right now?
My definition of success is for one, making sure my family's taken care of. As long as they have no worries in our stability, that's success to me. As long as I can spend time with them and I'm being a good husband and a good dad, that's success to me. My business, making sure that I'm serving our clients, I'm serving my employees, and that they're getting the life that they want, along with the paycheck that they want to subsidize that life. That's success to me. It's not very much, but all of that wrapped up, the number one thing is just being right with my creator. That is the ultimate form of success, because we're only here for so long, and we really have two choices. We have the choice of death or life, and that's eternal. So my number one definition of my success is, am I doing the right thing? And am I walking in the light with my creator, with God, with Jesus? And am I living the life that he is calling me to live? As long as I'm doing that and I'm feeling great, I'm listening, that's success to me.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. What would you say, I love to share with the people who are listening some ways that they can start to do some research, do some readings, whatever it happens to be. So what are some resources you might recommend to read in terms of books, podcasts, whatever you find to be helpful for you as you continue to work on bettering yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So anything sales related, fanatical prospecting, great book. Everybody probably should have read that if you're in sales. Honestly, it's kind of a fundamental book. Buy Back Your Time, really making you realize, like, what am I wasting my time on? How do I allocate my time better? That was huge for me. Obviously, a book comprised of all the other books, the Bible, a lot of answers just for life and business are in there. So you could always give that a read. I'd start with the Gospels first. So just jump into the New Testament first. If you've never read it before, that way it's a little bit easier for you.
Sure.
But I'm going through a book right now. My father-in-law gave it to me. I have it right here. The Art of Rest, Faith to Hit Pause in a World That Never Stops. And I have notes. I'm still not that far, but man, I already would recommend it to people who have a hard time pausing and stopping and spending time doing outside things other than work. It's already been a huge help, but I can't wait. I can't wait to finish it. As far as podcasts, I was listening to a couple, but honestly, I've fallen back to one, and that's just Founders. It's a great podcast. You get to learn about a lot of great entrepreneurial people and fundamentals, and it dates back to way long ago, and you can draw connections to modern day. It's incredible. So I listen to Founders every time I mow the lawn, anytime I'm doing any work, and then a lot of times I'll hear something, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to listen to this again. I'm going to take notes.
Yeah.
So I'll go back and I'll listen to it again and take some notes and things like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Eric Halverson, appreciate you so much. Where can people go if they want to connect with you or learn more about you? How can they find you?
Yeah. I mean, just find me right on LinkedIn, Eric Halverson. You can go to my business's website, Halverson Tech Sourcing, reach out there. That's totally fine too. But honestly, just message me on LinkedIn or shoot an email through the website, and I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody about anything we've talked about today.
Awesome. Eric, appreciate you, brother. Keep on performing, all right?
Of course.